And then what was the first morning when you woke up and you were like, so I'm now responsible, much more at the sharp edge of the sword, of figuring out how I'm going to put food on the table for my family?
It's always been a dream of mine to start my own business. So that's what led me to this. Now, there's a lot of preparation to it. You don't just jump off one day, quit your job. You have a wife and family and people to take care of. You gotta, strategically kind of set yourself up.
Now, a lot of people who haven't made a transition see it as potentially a 0 or 1. As in, on one day, I'm employed, on the next, I'm not. And what you actually insinuated there is, actually, there's many ways of de-risking. The ways cost time, as in, you're working more than the 8 hours because you have to do your full job and then you have to do what you have to do.
It's also applying the fact that a lot of it is, I guarantee my work, and if you're not happy with it, you don't have to pay me. And I know that seems wild and crazy, but that's how much I stand behind what I do and what I can deliver. Hi, folks. A quick one before we dive into this week's episode. Our book, The Critical Path Career, How to Advance in Construction Planning and Scheduling, is out now, and you can order it on Amazon. We'll include a link below. This is a great way to show support for the Beyond Deadlines podcast, and Greg and I have worked extremely hard taking everything we know in our 30 years of experience, plus everything we've picked up from shooting this podcast, and we've tried to pack it into an information-dense book that you can use right away. In the book, we have specific strategies on how to get a raise, how to get a promotion, and find a new job. We include 26 of the best interview questions that we have come across, in addition to 34 specific impact ideas that you can go use on your projects today. We want to thank everyone who's shown us support so far and enjoy this week's episode.
Welcome to the Beyond Deadlines podcast, where we tackle challenges that scheduling leaders face on a day-to-day basis. I'm Greg Lawton. I'm the CEO of an AI schedule management company called Nodes and Links.
My name is Micah Piippo, and I've been planning and scheduling projects all over the world for the last 15 years.
Today, Micah's on the hot seat because I finally managed to talk him into doing something. 6 months ago-ish, Micah quit his very, very nice corporate job and became a consultant. Now, a lot of schedule leaders and schedulers that I talk to that have done at least a few years in their career think at some point, do I become a consultant? And this is really a conversation of, is grass really greener on the other side? And what have your experiences been? So, with that in mind, first question, what were the main drivers that made you pull the trigger?
That's a great place to start. Well, just to rehash, we've said a couple different times in this podcast, 5 ways to make money as a scheduler. Get a raise, get a promotion, land a new job, start your own consultancy, or start your own software company. And I think in my career, I've gotten plenty of raises, gotten plenty of promotions, landed a couple new jobs. And that's where this next transition took me, where I didn't see myself quite fitting in the corporate ladder anymore and in larger scale companies. And I didn't see any great positions for smaller space companies. And I really wanted complete autonomy, complete control. It's always been a dream of mine to start my own business. So that's what led me to this. Now, there's a lot of preparation to it. You don't just jump off one day, quit your job. You have a wife and family and people to take care of. You gotta, strategically kind of set yourself up. But that was where, I landed with this effort.
What was the last day of employment like? And then what was the first morning when you woke up and you were like, so I'm now responsible, much more at the sharp edge of the sword, of figuring out how I'm going to put food on the table for my family?
Yeah. Not very dramatic. I had been moonlighting, don't tell Intel this, but I'd been moonlighting previously before I left to build up some clients, to build up some cash flow. I mean, you can tell, if you go read your employment agreement, I was within the bounds of it. But if you go just to build the cat, so it kind of just was, it wasn't, like this grand day. It was more business as usual. I think the next day was, I had some client deliverables to work on. I had to start, I could actually go. The one thing I was excited about was, since I wasn't working with Intel anymore, I could be more public on LinkedIn and do more aggressive business development. And then I got less questions of like, are you working for Intel or not? You're out there in the market now getting after things. So it wasn't, as a family, we definitely celebrated the transition. I think we had a nice dinner, but it wasn't anything crazy to go from one day to the next. It wasn't until a couple of weeks later that I think the realization hits in, when there are no more team meetings, there are no more HR. Everyone needs to join this. No more manager reviews, no more OKR, just sitting in a room by yourself. It's like, all right, this one's on me. No one's coming to save me.
I like that. And I think you actually pulled a point there that resonates with me, because obviously I'm primarily the fifth option of making money. And by the way, for people listening, the book that mainly Micah wrote, I did tiny bits of the career, but the Critical Path Career is literally just how Micah and a lot of friends that we have made money. So it's not a hypothetical. It's literally how we made money. But just to reflect on something you just said, it was a transition. Now, a lot of people who haven't made a transition see it as potentially a 0 or 1. As in, on one day, I'm employed, on the next, I'm not. And what you actually insinuated there is, actually, there's many ways of de-risking. The ways cost time, as in, you're working more than the 8 hours because you have to do your full job and then you have to do what you have to do. Can you just talk us through how you were thinking about making that a smoother transition as opposed to a 0 or 1?
Yeah, the way I thought about it was probably far too long and far too deep. There's a couple different pieces that come to mind in my brain. I am a big fan of the test it before you go all in, approach. I remember back in the day, I had this dream that I wanted to be a chef. And I was like, yeah, I'm just going to quit the corporate world and I'm going to become a chef. Spoke with one of my buddies who was a chef and heard about his experience working at a top end kitchen where he made the same salad 100 times a night for 6 months before he got to move on to like the appetizer area. And I listened to him say that, and it was during dinner business hours, working weekends. That sounds horrible. Why would I ever do that? But I think that's where people get caught up. They do two different things. Either one, they build up these glass paper walls that they never break down. So they think about this as like a big 1-0 jump, and the fear of that never pushes them to get a raise, get a promotion, or go do anything. Then the second type of person jumps in reckless abandon without any sort of strategic thought about how I can go test this, how I can go push this. And so one thing I did is I volunteer at Washington State University through their business map program. And in this program, you work with a student group to then go mentor small businesses. So ahead of starting my own business, I was able to get in-depth experience of what small businesses are like and what they have to go through and the challenges the owners face, and get some connection there and understand whether this is something I would like or not. And through that mentorship program, I actually got more energy, more excited, more able to do it. The other one is, once you set out, how are you going to land clients and bring work and bring business in? That's another one where you need to start building your network, developing your network, understand what people pay money for things you do. And just with small asks, you can be like, hey, would you pay 20 grand for this? Or would you pay 10 grand for this? When you meet different people and different propositions. And so how you position yourself is super important.
So I'm going to separate that into two questions. I want to dig a bit deeper. The first question is really around that kind of business map program and the experience of starting the business. What are a couple of the things that people on the outside, like people in the corporate world, would have never really thought about that you have to do behind the scenes when starting your own company? And I say that knowing full well that you were texting me for a while in not despair, but how tax worked and these kinds of things.
Yeah, that's a big one that you want. If I was going to take a biggest lesson, it wasn't. I was able to figure. If you're in America, it's different than the rest of the world. But in America, you need to figure out healthcare if you're going to go that route, which I would recommend having healthcare. I'm not a financial advisor, no whatever formal blah, 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 but typically you want to have healthcare. And depending how much money you think you're going to make, it kind of puts you in different scenarios. And so that's a key one of your healthcare. I would get that figured out before you leave your company. Sometimes your company, when you leave, you can sign up for Cobra. That's actually probably going to be a little bit higher than what the market charges. There's a whole thing there, but you can get that sorted out before you ever step out the door. The second one, looking back as well, is it's the whole conundrum of you're selling something. Like think about like McDonald's, they sell like a cheeseburger. McDonald's knows exactly how much that cheeseburger costs them overall. They've calculated the actual cost of goods. They've calculated the business costs, the labor, all of that. And they can say, hey, we're charging, I've never had a McDonald's cheeseburger in years, but let's say $12 for a cheeseburger. We're making $6 off of. That is the accounting conundrum where whatever you're going to then go sell, you need to know how much in taxes you're actually going to pay. And that depends widely on what sort of business entity you set up. Are you an LLC, an S Corp, a C Corp? There's different ways to set it up, but you can go get someone and pay money ahead of time to have that set up for you. And I'd highly recommend doing that. That way, as you start to go down the road, it's just less painful and easily known. You need to focus on the things that drive business to you. And that's another one that's it's very obvious now, but everything you do that isn't making you money. So like, let's say you decide to file your own taxes. I mean, that's time you could be spent going and getting clients, delivering work. You need to be careful with that because you don't want to offshore everything and incur a bunch of debt and not make money to cover it. But it's just things you want to think about as you go through the process of I'm going to leave to start my own company and consultancy.
So there's a lot of detail in there. I want to flip now to the second component, where you've mentioned it in a couple of the answers, which is business winning. So if we've had a career as schedulers, generally you don't need to business win. You're called into projects, you're deployed on projects, you're asked to do activities, and generally we get very good at service delivery. Business winning is not service delivery, and individual consulting business winning is not project business winning, like putting together schedules and these kinds of things to get a bid. Could you just talk us through what individual consulting business winning is like?
Yeah, we actually, one great resource for this is we had Diane on earlier in the podcast. She did an excellent piece on this as well. Your initial business winning when you first start out is most likely just your network. It's just the people in your network who you've worked with in the past, who you have connections with, and reaching out to them to see what sort of potential services and if you can get a small contract and your foot in the door. It's less likely that you're going to go out, like you said, and be competing with the TNTs and the Arcadis of the world. Like, I'm going to bid this data center job and bring in 4 schedulers. I mean, people have done it and you can. That is just a much heavier lift, heavier risk reward type thing. More likely you're going to start off small, chewing off bits and bobs that other people won't pick up, or because they trust you and your brand, you can go out and go do. That's the one thing as you can start doing now is thinking about your network, thinking about if you're on the owner side, the GCs you've worked with, if you're on the GC side, the owners you've worked with, the other consultancies you've worked with, start figuring out who those people are, who are the deal approvers, what sort of things could they be looking for? Because if you decide to start out on your own and you run out of customers, you don't have a business.
Let's pull on the business model for a second, because you mentioned that. So creating a bit of a false dichotomy. But there are businesses that make money through volume, as in we're going to sell 30 schedulers, project managers, something like that. And then there are businesses that make money through deep competence. So one-man bands, delay analysis, acceleration analysis, these kinds of things. How did you think about what business you wanted to start with, or maybe become? Like, I don't know. Like, for me, the future's always open, but like, how did you think about that?
To me, I thought about what I'm very attuned to, like my energy levels now and what excites me and what gives me passion. And to me, being on the owner side for quite some time, the today's consultancy offering left me quite perplexed on how we got here today. Modern consultancy offer, and it works in a lot of scenarios and does quite a lot of things, but it's usually the only thing on the menu is you have a task or a thing that needs to be done. And so I'm going to provide you a person, but I'm going to charge you hourly on that thing. And I hope there's enough things for this person to be full time. I mean, and I make money off of saying, yeah, I'm going to make simplistic numbers here just for sake, saying that I'm going to charge you $100 an hour and I'm going to pay the person $50 an hour. And then in that $50, I take care of the person's healthcare and some other stuff and overheads. And then I keep, the rest of the money. To me, that is just incentivizing the wrong behavior typically, because most of the things we do on projects are deliverable based, not hourly based. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need to just push a button. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't need to it's not manufacturing. I'm not just pushing a button in Primavera P6 every 5 minutes, right? It's like, I need a schedule review done. So if you pay me hourly to do the schedule review, aren't you incentivizing me just to take longer? So when I was thinking about that, what drove me passionately is like, how can I just deliver a ton of value in the time it takes me, however long that is, and then incentivize me to do it faster? So that's where I saw a bigger opportunity in the SME market, the subject matter expert market, to go find opportunities like that, to go use my knowledge and skill set and then deliver, you know, overall work as opposed to be paid hourly. I just thought it was very strange, the hourly engagement.
Just to really bring it to life, are you talking there about fixed price work? So essentially saying, I need a schedule review done for all of this, and it's like, okay, well, a schedule review is, I don't know, $1, $1 million. I don't really know what they go for personally.
To me, it is a more fixed priced offering. And that's exactly what it is. It's scoping out what the client needs and then providing them a fixed price and a guarantee of delivery. It's also applying the fact that a lot of it is, I guarantee my work. And if you're not happy with it, you don't have to pay me. And I know that seems wild and crazy, but that's how much I stand behind what I do and what I can deliver.
See, that's I know that you and I are both fans of a gentleman called Alex Hormozy over in the US. And there's a value creation framework, and guarantees are a large part of that. And I do remember when you were talking to me early on about what you were thinking. It did actually surprise me how few guarantees are provided in the projects world. So to your point is, I'll give you a fixed price, and if I just don't deliver or you don't rate my work, money back. Like, that is, I cannot think of a major company who would do that.
It just, again, it goes back to me. It goes back to incentives. You know, I mean, I've been an owner before, and next thing I know, I hire a consultant to do a specific job. And then I'm coaching them like an employee to bring up their skill set and their talent. And the thing that's completely infuriating as an owner when you do that. So number one, you're typically paying the person where you thought they would be, and they're delivering lower than that. That's one. So then you're not getting what you asked for. Number two, you're spending time to upskill the person, which eventually they will leave, and you just made profit for that company. Because I just took a junior scheduler to a senior scheduler, then that senior scheduler eventually leave, and they'll go make money off the senior scheduler, and I'll be out in the wind. Why would I do that? Why would I pay to train people who are then going to go make profit for somebody else? And I think we're seeing a lot of this play out in a lot of the big American GCs that are now deciding to build scheduling departments. We've had many of them on from, I think we had Brady from J.E. Dunn, we had Noah from Holder, and Josh from Zachary, who are building out scheduling departments because they're tired of this model of hourly scheduling consultants. And I know we were kind of beating this horse dead. And there's nothing really wrong with some of these other models when you got to expand and scale. But I think there is an angle for a different product offering. There's an angle for something else out there that may provide a different, avenue and a value set than what's traditionally been done.
So I've got three questions that are bouncing in my mind, and they're separate questions. But I'll lay all three of them out, and then you can decide which order you want to answer.
Forget question 2 and 3 and just answer one.
Number one is, you write a lot of posts on AI. How's AI changing your workflows? Number two is, grass is always greener. If you could go back, would you do it again? And question number three would be, what advice would you give to someone who's actually thinking about this route?
So actually, go in reverse order. Someone who's thinking about this, what I would recommend is you sit down and you write out a plan and you do like a year-long plan. You take what your expenses are right now, the money you would need to survive, and you figure out how you can build a runway. That runway needs to carry you for however long you think it's going to take for your business to take off and start making that money. Okay. And then I would start to go out and try and figure out whether this is for you, try and go win some clients, some nighttime work, go try and get out there and make it happen. But create your runway and runway map, right? Don't be the person who jumps blindly and, burns savings when you don't need to. The second question, which I've already forgotten, was would I do it again?
The second question was, if you could go back, would you do it again?
If I go back, yeah, absolutely. And I probably would have jumped sooner, to be honest with you. I think I waited too long and there were some opportunities I missed out on. I was too conservative from what I would do, but I would 100% do it again. But there's a lot of personal story there and there's a lot of background for me, and so again, I don't want to think that this is the only route you go and the only thing you do. But for me and where I was at in my career, it made the most sense and I would go do it again. And then your first question is AI is a complete game changer, total game changer for people who are looking to start individual consultancies. The amount of automation and help that you can leverage is absolutely off this charts, nothing like what it was a couple of years ago, and what you can do as a single person compared to what teams of people used to do is absolutely crazy. And mostly what I'm speaking to is the back end business operation piece. There are some stuff going on in the scheduling world. We've talked a lot about it, but when it comes down to writing RFPs, responding to clients, building proposals, all of that backdoor work, back end work, where you'd probably have to sit there for a couple hours and write out this, it's just so much easier and so much faster. And that's another piece about being my own. I get to use all this tech, and I don't have to. So that's another part with me. The total side thing is, man, working at a corporate company and using technology is one of the most painful experiences ever. The amount of time it takes you to whitelist stuff and get it and actually use it is just But being able to be out and just pick up technology, use it as I see fit, try and build stuff to help my business operation, deploy it, not have to make it an OKR or talk to some vice president who doesn't even know what AI is and convince them that they should be using it. That's where you can tell my passion's coming through and I've found my sweet spot.
I think that last bit's actually a really, really important point, which is, there's different kinds of work you have to deliver. So, there'll be confidential analysis you have to deliver where it's like, okay, well, I have to use the tools that are permitted. But a huge amount of business winning is, writing introduction emails, writing proposals, doing graphics for proposals, all of this kind of stuff. And as a business owner, you can decide what kind of tool sets you use. A big one for me is like finance and accounting. It's just being able to do P&L, balance sheets, cash flows, things like that. Super easy. Okay, we'll end up with our normal things. So final thoughts. What's one thing, apart from everything you've said, what's one thing you just want someone to take away from this?
I think if you're interested in starting, any of those routes we talked about, it's up to you. You have to have the agency, you have to have the push, you have to have the desire. So if you want to go do anything, get a raise, get a promotion, land a new job, start a career, start a software company, get a piece of paper out and go figure it out. That's the only way it's going to happen. Quit letting the little voice in your head say, don't do it, get in the way.
Yep, I agree with that. All right, well, we'll end it there. Thank you very much for listening to the Beyond Deadlines podcast today. Things you can do to help us out. One is just share, like, send to your friends, these kinds of things. Micah and I get proportionally more messages saying thank you the more people listen, so that keeps us motivated and keeps us going. The other thing is, if you've got ideas for content, things you'd like us to discuss, guests you'd like us to have on, just drop us a message on whatever platform, Spotify, YouTube, email, whatever it is. And with that, I'll say have a fantastic rest of your day.